Excellent!
What's up, guys? Welcome to Paul's Hardware. It is a brand new launch of a new series of both CPUs as well as motherboards from Intel. Well, the CPUs are from Intel, the motherboards from our Intel's partners, such as ASUS. And as I've been doing kind of a tradition now, I've been bringing JJ over to take a look at as many of their new motherboards as we can. So that's what we're doing today. We have a wide range of ASUS Z270 motherboards here. They all support the new KB Lake processors that should be out now or out very soon from Intel. And they've all got Z270 chipsets. And there's actually 4 different product lines. So let's start out with that, JJ. What are the 4 different product lines and which segments of the market are they sort of aimed at?
So first up, we're going to have the traditional series that kind of we've been, I think, most known for. So this is historically covered boards like the Deluxe, the Pro, or the Dash A, which has been really popular. And these are all now designated underneath what we call our Prime series of motherboards.
Right.
The easiest way that you'll probably be able to see them is that they're going to be the boards that are essentially white. So if you see essentially a board that's got that kind of black PCB and then that white design aesthetic, that's going to be that series. And in terms of generally who we're trying to target, I would say that the Prime series is really kind of the foundation from ASUS. You're getting, best-in-class design, so you're going to get improvements in pretty much every key category that you would want, whether it's audio, networking, fan controls, UEFI, all that really great stuff. Build quality is going to be elevated, but it's really kind of designed for really anybody, whether you're a gamer, whether you're looking to be able to build a hybrid system, so content creation, advanced productivity, maybe a little bit mixing of all of those things. It's going to make a really great foundation for all of them.
Cool. Next up, we have the Tough series. I've been a long-time fan of the Tough series. Are there any changes to this, or is this kind of maintaining where it's been? Pretty
much it's going to be pretty close to it. Probably the biggest change is that people, when they're looking for the board, they might be thinking that they're going to put like Sabertooth. Historically, the boards have always, that we've generally messaged, because we did have some variants in the past, such as like the Griffin. There's no more Sabertooth, so everything falls under the Tough. So it's going to be the Tough 270, and there's going to be a Mark 1, and then there's going to be a Mark 2. Okay. And that's just going to be like previous generations, and we'll go into some of those differences in general. But
we got both of them here.
In terms of kind of your target demographic, really first and foremost, I would say this is really for advanced productivity, for content creation enthusiasts, for prosumers and professionals that are looking for validation with specialized equipment, especially stuff like Quadro cards, Tesla, Xeon Phi, things along those lines. And definitely I'd say any type of cooling and water cooling enthusiast. Anybody that's really interested in fans and a lot of control and monitoring, these cards are purpose-built for them. We've also updated a little bit of some of the overclocking functionality, so definitely still enthusiast gamers can find this as a foundation as well.
Beautiful. And more on that when we cover the boards. Strix, of course, was sort of introduced as a sub-brand of ROG. Is that a fair assessment of that?
Somewhat. Yeah. So in the previous generation, we had what we called our pro gaming line. So that existed for a little period of time. But now, essentially, we've folded everything underneath the Strix banner. So Strix, along with ROG, pretty much make up the dedicated gamer segment series of motherboards that we produce. Now, like we said, the Prime and the Tough can definitely be gaming-oriented boards, but when you talk about Strix or ROG, they're purpose-built. So everything from the features, the functionality, and the software stack that all goes in there is going to be designed for gamers first and foremost. So with Strix, you're going to predominantly be at a little bit more focused at, say, entry and high-performance mid-range series of motherboards in terms of their price band.
Okay.
And it's going to be kind of like a trickle-down effect, where a lot of the cutting-edge features and functions that we saw on the highest-end ROG boards start to kind of get incorporated into those Strix series.
So if you're building a system for gaming first, Strix is probably where you're going to want to go. Although it's not to say that any of these other boards can't do gaming. And then of course the ROG series, the cream of the crop, basically whatever you guys can think of that you want to throw into high-end boards, that's where the ROG goes. But you've expanded the line too. There's both the more expensive feature-rich ones, but also the sort of more affordable ones as well now.
Correct. So for ROG, we now have a very expensive product line, and when you tie in Strix, there's a lot of boards that you're going to be able to pick from. But from specifically the launch boards, you're going to have the Hero, you're going to have the Code, and you're going to have the Formula.
Code is new.
Yes, Code is brand new. Okay. And so these are going to definitely sit at the higher end of the spectrum. So for users that I think really want to focus first and foremost on aesthetics, extremely specialized features and functions, advanced audio design, really robust overclocking, and really looking for attention to detail, I think I'm at all aspects of the board for an enthusiast-oriented build, of course, you're going to want to gravitate towards ROG.
Okay, and we have the Hero and the Formula today, so I'm going to put links down in the description to shortcuts if you want to jump straight to the overviews of any of these boards. We're going to be doing a little bit more detail on each one. But before we do that, what would you say are kind of the non-negotiables that you have that sort of cover all the boards from sort of a certain point up? The features that you were like, every board has to have this, and so every board does.
Yeah, so historically, the way we've always tried to frame this is usually kind of from our perspective, what we call non-negotiables of design, right? And so these are really kind of the foundation of making sure that if you go about building a system, you're going to get this kind of guaranteed level of experience. So I think the first one is aesthetics. Aesthetics has increasingly become really important when you go about building a system. Even when we talk about quote-unquote budget builds, like if you're building like a $750 system, doesn't mean it has to look bad.
It's still got to match. The colors can match.
You still want it to look good. You still want to be able to have, I think, a consistent ID and a specialized look and feel. So I think regardless of any of these boards you look at, you're going to see that they've got a really strong and specialized design aesthetic. And we've tried to also make sure that they complement, I think, the targeted kind of themes that we see in terms of color builds that are popular in the community. So of course, with the Prime, you get that white. So there's a lot of different types of white chassis that are on the market. And of course, white components like our dual series of graphics cards and a number of other types of peripherals and products that are out there. And I also like white purposely for a contrast perspective too. So I like sometimes throwing it in black or silver builds just to be able to add contrast. It doesn't always have to be white on white. So I think that's interesting. So that's
also like just that there's no real strong like color theme with any of these. I mean, maybe a little bit more some of the military theme with the tough boards, but even that's very subtle. So if you wanted to have like, oh, I want a purple build or a yellow build or something like that, any of these should pretty much match up with that, of course, with the right touches. But that's kind of the beauty of making your own system, making it work for you.
And you make a perfect point there, and that's probably the ending point, I think, on the aesthetics is that we consciously made an effort, especially with the gaming series of boards, where we know that there's going to be probably more of a focus when it comes to RGB lighting and having a lot of secondary colors, whether it's on the components or accessories, whether it's the chassis or cables or fans or whatever it might be, to make sure that those boards are essentially monochromatic, right? Okay. So that you're looking at kind of silver, gray, and black tones, so that's always going to complement any color scheme that you want to go with.
So any other non-negotiables that across the board?
Oh yeah, for sure. So that's actually the next one is I would say that a big focus for this generation is going to be RGB lighting. Okay. So right now, just a little bit before the launch of this Z270 chipset, we had just finalized what we called our Aura Sync initiative. So this was essentially the ability to have all ASUS components be synchronized in terms of how you can control the RGB lighting experience. So that went from the motherboard to the graphics card, to LED strips, to compatible chassis, to our Claymore keyboard, to our Spatha mouse, and now even DRAM modules. So across the board, it's really the first time that you can have a consistent lighting experience that can be uniquely controlled. And so for this generation, of course, all the boards have been phased in to be able to offer this type of synchronization, which I think is fantastic. And we've upped the ante by pretty much the majority of them you're going to see are going to have 2 RGB headers that are built on.
Nice.
And we've also strategically placed them. So generally when you find that there's going to be the 2 headers, one is going to be placed at the top of the board and then another one at the bottom of the board. So that works out really well when you have to kind of run the LED strip maybe on the top end. Maybe you want to have it kind of hidden in the internal cavity for the top of the chassis, or maybe you're running out to an LED strip that's built into the chassis or something along those lines. So I think that's really awesome. And a question that you had asked as well is that we have also incorporated even more granularity and control. So you're going to be able to have the ability to customize things like sequencing, where you want the LED chain to start off. And then you can also go ahead and have independent control for each one of the connected devices under the Aura software.
So whether you're talking about other devices that are connected, individual zones on the board itself, as well as the individual RGB leads that come off of there. Wonderful for everyone except for the few people who are just totally sick of the RGB trend. But you know what? You can just turn the lights off too. I mean, that's always an option.
Yeah, and you don't know, and I think, one touch little point there too is that you don't always have to focus on making it flashy. Like a lot of times what I tend to do is I end up having just a synchronized kind of more of ambient light. Yeah. And I think that when you execute it like that, even when you have all the devices, it can look really clean and just, it adds a little bit of pop to the system, but it's not necessarily like you're trying to have everything just be lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, so tons of flexibility there. Sorry for the train rolling by, but we're going to press on. Other non-negotiables?
So the next one I think would be the audio design. So we've really been kind of an industry leader at trying to incorporate specialized audio design, and we've pretty much seen now that every competitor out in the marketplace has adopted what we originally innovated and implemented on our G-Series motherboards, which was the isolated audio design, right? And that's pretty much par for the course. All these boards, of course, all have an isolated audio design. They have an operational amplifier built on board. They have a D-pop filter. They've got a lot of really great stuff. But what's really special is that we work with Realtek. So this is the first time in quite a number of years that we have a new Realtek codec that's being implemented. So this is the S1220. And this is a really special audio codec, and you're going to pretty much find this on every board with the exception of the Mark II that we have here. So all of these now feature this very, very high-end audio codec, and one of the really special aspects about is it has significantly improved dynamic range, which is really important in terms of capturing, you know, your lows and then your maximum highs, and then also the signal noise ratio on both input and output has been significantly improved. And the reason why that's really important is that if you're doing anything like streaming, you're doing anything recording, and you're using both your line in and your line out, if you don't want to necessarily make the investment in like a prosumer like DAC or something like that to be able to get a high quality level, you can now feel really comfortable that the line level input quality is very good on the board.
Nice.
And of course, for some of our higher end boards, like the ROG series, they take it even to the next level, where we've evolved the work that we laid the foundation with on working with Sabre, and we've incorporated even a more advanced ESS 9023 Sabre DAC on there. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of that cool stuff, but I think audio for this generation is really awesome. So music, movies, games, videos, whatever you're going to be doing, you can get a really great audio experience.
Wonderful. All right. Any
fan controls?
Fan controls, of course.
You know me. I'm a stickler for when it comes to fan controls. I think they're always super interesting and super important. I think about making sure that your system is not only efficiently cooled, but it's also quiet, right? I mean, I hate having a system that's loud, and I want to be able to really manage how everything works. So all of these boards, they feature our fan expert technology. So that means that brass tacks, when you get either into the UEFI or into the operating system, you're going to be able to go ahead and have unique control over every single header, 3-pin or 4-pin. A new addition for this generation is that for all the chassis fan headers, we can automatically detect whether they're a DC or PWM based fan.
Oh, that's nice.
Before, you had to manually go in there and select whether it was a PWM or DC fan, but we can now, of course, do all the previous stuff that we were able to do, so we can calibrate every single fan, figure out its minimum and its maximum. Also, another very important point that a lot of people forget about is that there's temperature input mapping on all of the boards.
Oh, nice.
So that means that historically, your CPU fan and any of the fans you have connected only respond to the CPU temperature. But of course, with our boards, you can have the fans respond to different temperature input sources. So for this generation, we've even phased in the GPU for them. So if you want to have, let's say, your front intake fans on a chassis respond to the GPU as opposed to the CPU, you can do that. And that actually makes a lot more sense. A lot of times when you're playing a game, the CPU is very well cooled, and it might be sitting like at 50, 60 degrees, but your GPU could be getting into 75, 80 degrees. So it makes more sense to actually have the ramping or intake airflow respond to the GPU and not to the CPU, because in most gaming scenarios, the CPU is actually going to be running cooler than the graphics card.
Excellent. So great to have that option.
Yeah, and there's definitely even a lot more that's packed in terms of the fan controls. We'll touch a little bit when we kind of talk about the formula and some of the add-on functions.
Okay.
But definitely for users, they don't want to forget the granularity and control of also being able to assign the output signal for the fan headers, which is pretty cool. So while we're going to talk about maybe number of fan headers, people forget that if I can set any fan header to a PWM output, that means I can buy a cheap just PWM splitter cable and then power that from the power supply, but have all my fans actually controlled by the motherboard. So that's great, like a chassis where you might have like 3 front intake fans, just connect those to one single header because they can be grouped and controlled by one single one. So even though the board might have 6, which maybe you're in your chassis or your build, you're going to use 12, you could actually cover that easily by one single board because we have the ability to do that output control.
Nice. Save money on fan controllers.
Yes.
Okay. Sure. So shall we start in on the prime board?
Sure.
All right, guys. So this is the Z270, -A.
Yep.
So part of the prime series, black and white aesthetic. Of course, like all the boards, Kaby Lake processors, as well as support for DDR4. And this board has a lot going on. I mean, considering that it is what you would kind of consider your mainstream offering.
Yeah, so what we consider entry level, it's our performance entry level board. So it's usually going to be sitting around that about $150 price point, but you're not really missing anything. You got our full digital power delivery control and design, so that of course you're going to get a great management experience for being able to, of course, overclock it or tune for efficiency. You've got USB 3.0, you got USB 3.1. Speaking of that, also, of course, we have our new specialized USB 3.1 internal header, which is great because for the latest generation of chassis that are coming to the market from companies like Inwin, Lianli, there's a header that's going to allow you to go ahead and have flexibility that you can just run that straight into it and be able to maximize the throughput. Updates from some of the previous generations are also going to be that we've incorporated the safe slot design there too. So while really most users don't necessarily need to worry about that legitimately in terms of having their PCI slot break or anything, if you do move your system from place to place, or you just want to actually have confidence in there, it's nice in terms of an addition to have on the board. It's also important to note that every board that we're going to talk about fully supports Intel Optane, which is going to be a requirement if you want to run Intel Optane in conjunction with your hard drive, whether it's a mechanical hard drive or an SSD. It has to be a Z270 chipset. It has to be using a Kaby Lake series CPU. So, and we are, of course, a validated partner with Intel in that respect. If you're looking for other cutting-edge I/O tech too, just like in previous generations, all the boards, including this one, they can support Thunderbolt via just our Thunderbolt 3 add-in card. So you don't have to pay the immediate cost of having that built on board. One other nice thing too, also I'll say on this board is that it, like all our other boards, is that we talked about that all these boards have a high number of fan headers, but some unique things in addition is you got the fan extension card, which is a great little add-on. It's $20. Gives you 3 more additional headers, or 4 if you use it like a splitter. So you can even have more connected fans. You've got a dedicated all-in-one water pump header, which is nice, especially for all these using those type of things. And you've got a high amperage header. Cool. The high amperage header, a lot of people kind of wonder, well, what is that really all about? And it can really be used in a couple scenarios. Of course, you could just use it to power a fan, but it could also be useful in situations where you want to power actually a higher performing water cooling pump. You'll usually see those broken down in terms of white here, so you can see that we've got one that says AIO and then the other one says high amp.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and then in terms of all the standard stuff that you would expect, we of course have an Intel NIC and both Type A and Type C connectors for USB 3.1 and great build quality throughout. So everything you really asked for.
Got M.2 down here as well?
Yeah, so you got dual M.2, so you got one right at the top, and then we have another one down here. Like always, we've tried to maximize thermal isolation. So in most situations, I'd say if you're initially going for one, use the bottom, of course, because this is going to generally get the best airflow from the front, and you're minimizing hot air from the GPU and from the CPU section. If you're going to be running 2, then of course you've got to go in that configuration.
Not seeing as many U.2 connectors this time around. Was there any reason behind that?
I think it's just because you're seeing there's not as many drives, and the additional drives that have come out to the market outside of the Intel 750 series, they're focused a little bit more towards the professional segmentation of the market. So it is still awesome though, and definitely if you're looking for big capacity drives, keep in mind that you can now get U.2 in over 4 terabytes.
Damn.
So pretty awesome.
That is nice.
That's why it's a little bit more common on, let's say, like our X99 series.
And if you really do need it, you can use the HyperKit to add that on with an M.2 slot. All right, moving over to the TUF series, and we'll start off with this one. This is the Mark II TUF Z270. And this board is a little bit more lightweight, a little bit smaller, the slightly reduced ATX size, so it's not quite as wide. So it should fit in slightly smaller cases, depending on your situation. This is a much more affordable TUF series board than we've seen before.
Yeah, well, it's pretty similar to the Mark II right now in terms of being a price-aggressive board. So it's very similar to the price band that you're going to see for the Dash A. And really, kind of some people, if they wonder what's the big difference between like the Dash A and the TUF series, is really it's in the heart of the software. So with Dash A, we give you the full, complete auto-tuning technology. So for dynamic real-time auto overclocking, which is really awesome, right? CPU-specific, cooling-specific, all that great stuff. TUF series doesn't have that, but for this generation, we have updated the thermal radar software to include performance tuning. So it doesn't have the same level of customization for complete dynamic real-time auto overclocking that the Prime series does, but you can still get one-click optimization. Really where the differentiation is going to come in for TUF is going to be in the validation for specialized items. So things like I said, like Xeon Phi, Quadro cards, Tesla cards, things along those lines. Also, the componentry. All the componentry generally is a very high level in terms of its specification. So we've got like 10K rated capacitors versus like 5K rated caps you're going to find on the Prime series of boards. The ESD connections, a lot of people forget about this, but the most common point of failure pretty much always on motherboards, unless it's like end user induced, is going to be electrostatic discharge. So it comes from like plugging in flash drives, removal of different devices, or shorting on metal contact. And so all the IO throughout the entire board, not only on the back, but also for your front connectors, have much higher performing what are called contact and air discharge ESD diodes.
Okay.
So that allows the board to essentially be much more durable in the long term. So if you really care about having the most durable type of board, it's a great choice. Also, for cooling purposes, most of the basic boards like Prime only have a few temperature input sources. So outside of the CPU, with the Tough series, you're always going to have a huge amount of thermal input sources, generally a minimum of at least 10. So you can really manage your fans to respond to exactly the different type of temperature points that you want.
It's like you've got your top PCIe zone and your lower PCIe zone. And there's lots of zones. I also noticed you still have two M.2 slots on this board, which is also freaking awesome. Lower profile, it seems like in this area over here. Is there any particular reason for that?
No, it's just a cost factor in terms of trying to maintain it, but we still do a lot of intelligent design aspects. So these are all still right angle to allow for easy connections, right? And you still have a total of 6 ports on here. So there's nothing really compromised. But really the only thing that's I'd say clear drop down would be the audio. It's still a very good quality Realtek, I think 887 audio codec. Still has isolation, operational amplifier, but not as nice as that update that's on the Prime.
Okay, and there are a couple mount points here for the 3D printed stuff that you guys started with the last generation. There are actually a couple of those on the Prime board as well, just over on this side, and that will allow you to mount 3D printed things that can do things.
Yeah, we've got, if you check out the community page that we'll, I'm sure, link in the description, you can get pretty much all types of things like nameplates, fan holders, cable combs, all kinds of different items that we've produced to allow you to go ahead and customize the boards.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to the this is the Mark II. No, Mark 1. I'm sorry, I got them backwards. I kept doing that before as well. All right, so this is kind of the full-fat version of the board. Not only do you have the full thermal armor covering the entire thing, which I've always really enjoyed, just because it gives a really cool look to the board. And this one in particular, I was mentioning to JJ earlier, just a lot of little design element details kind of scattered through here. Just some texture stuff going on in here. I mean, it's a little bit of like a digi-camo look with some sunken different texture. I don't know. It's a weird aesthetic, like attention to detail that you normally wouldn't expect to see on something like a motherboard, but I feel like it works really well.
Yeah, it was actually inspired by modern advanced warfare kind of concepts.
Okay.
So like in the latest generation, you know, like Call of Duty, where you had like machinery built into the soldier, right? It's the same type of concept. So that's kind of what our ID team kind of went for. It's just kind of infusing this kind of digital camo, but that has also a little bit of kind of like an armature perspective to it.
Awesome.
But really the areas that you get the improvement on here is that this one gets the bumped up audio codec compared to the entry board. We've got the far more advanced thermal armor design, which not only looks cool, but has all the channeling technology like previous generations. You can drop in the assist fan there.
Fan there will cool off the VRMs.
Exactly. You've got the flow technology, so you can channel the different air. You've got RGB LED lighting zones on here as well, so you can go ahead and control them. These can customize the colors on there. You've got the RGB syncing that's been incorporated. You also have the dust defenders, like always too, so that if you want to kind of go for a more blacked out level of look. There's also a subtle difference in terms of the fan control technology. This one still uses the more advanced what's called Tough Ice processor, which is an independent processor that does all the load balancing and all the pole monitoring on a low level, so the CPU doesn't do it. This allows for a faster response and more accurate monitoring information. So once again, if you're really looking for the board that's kind of have this insane level of cooling and monitoring control, this is really going to be a board that you're going to want to take a look at.
There are 10 4-pin fan headers on this board. There's 4 here. There's 2 more. Wait, where'd they go? There's 4 here. There's 2 more here, and there's 4 more along the top.
Yeah, and then keep in mind this one can still use the fan extension extension card.
You can still add more.
Yeah.
Tough fortifier metal backplate as well. I also really like that, both for building and the look, and just keeping things durable. So yeah, good job on this board.
Yeah,
that's a cool one. All right, Let's move on. We forgot.
Oh, no, just one update. Some people also wonder about recent update that we did on Tough Series is most of them now full focus on having dual NICs. Previously in previous generations, you didn't have ones that have just, so this one has 2 gigabit Intel Ethernet ports, if that's something that you can leverage.
Oh, and I also was going to mention also 2 M.2 slots. One that's covered up by here by this little protective piece, as well as a vertical one, because they ran out of space. But vertical still works.
Yep. Well, it's also about thermal isolation. We could have placed it in a different place, but we also want to try to make sure that we're always taking thermals in consideration.
There's always at least 2 reasons for everything. All right, we're moving over to the Strix series. We have a single board from that series. This is the Z270E Gaming, and JJ told me that there's actually going to be a pretty wide variety of boards in the Strix series, since that's kind of the main gaming series. So if this one doesn't line up to your expectations, or if you wanted something that's a little bit less or a little bit more, there are probably other options as well.
Yeah, if you generally want more, you're probably going to start stepping into the RG territory.
Okay.
But definitely if you're looking for a little bit more price aggressive, but you still want a lot of the core Strix features, you could drop down. So this is the Dash E. So if you want to drop down, take for instance, you could go to the Dash F. But I really love the look of this board. I think that it's got an absolutely really clean monochromatic design. It's got this laser etched PCH design, which I think looks really interesting, really distinctive.
There's polygons on it.
Yeah, it's got 2-zone RGB lighting. Of course, you have the Aura Sync connectivity. You got the Slave slot updates. You of course have the improved audio design, and one really interesting thing too for this generation too is their dual operational amplifiers. Historically on most boards, when you have an operational amplifier, it's only designed for the front headphone connection but not for the line level out. So depending on how you had your setup connected, right, you might not essentially get the benefits of that isolated design in that respect.
This one has one for each?
Yeah, so here you have it for both. So that's another nice area in terms of the improvement. And also for some people, it maybe if they're upgrading from older platforms, so like, you know, Z68, P67, Z77, X58, any of that era, and they were familiar with RG boards. RG boards never had the auto tuning technology. It wasn't only until the last generation that they formally incorporated it in. So it's really cool that I think that for Strix and for the ROG, they all feature that auto tuning technology, that fan expert technology. So all the great stuff that you might have seen and wanted in the Prime series in the past is now available on these boards.
That's wonderful.
There's also a very big update to the Sonic Studio software, and while we're going to get into the ROG boards, this kind of does cover something that is consistent on both of them. And so some of the really cool things that we do have is that you can have assignable audio assignment per application, and all the customization for audio profiling can be done per application. So take for instance that if you want to go ahead and assign your game to output through HDMI, and then maybe something else to output through the line level output, and then something else to output through your headphones, you could have each individual application have different audio sources set for that. You could then uniquely set, in a previous generation, we had our advanced profiles that we were developing for music, movies, and games, but they were blanket audio profiles. Now we can actually apply the profiles per each application. So if you wanted to actually purposely have game for, let's say, you know, your game that you're jumping into, so you're jumping into Grand Theft Auto or Valve or whatever it might be, but then you jump back into Chrome and you're listening to Spotify, you're watching YouTube, you can have a different audio preset. So the level of granularity and control that I think that we're offering to gamers and enthusiasts for this generation is something that's really awesome. And once you kind of really get used to being able to have this subtle level of control, it's going to become addictive. You're really going to go, I can't go backwards.
That's gonna be. I feel like that's gonna be really beneficial for streamers.
Yeah,
too,
totally. That's 100% where we really got a lot of the inspiration and focus is for heavy multitaskers. So what we find is people that are jumping in and applications, and then for streamers that want the ability to kind of customize. And this also will work with our Perfect Voice technology. So our Perfect Voice technology is it has advanced post processing for not only incoming but outgoing audio. And you can also now set this up specifically to that. So if you want to have just the Perfect Voice set to be processing, let's say, your incoming game audio, but you don't want it active on anything else, then you can do that. So a lot of really cool advanced level of control and all the stuff that we'd expect, like we've already talked about, M.2, USB 3.1.
2 M.2.
Yeah, all that stuff is going to be on there.
I love having 2 M.2 slots. Also, this one has the RGB headers, both at the top and the bottom. And what else? Oh, and Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so that's another kind of thing call out is that for the previous generation, the Pro Gaming Aura, it didn't have Wi-Fi. So this is a 2x2 811 AC. That's extremely fast. You know, for people that are wanting for a reference benchmark, on average with a good AC router, you're talking about 3 to 4 times the speed of a 10100 Ethernet cable. So very, very good throughput, very good range, and you get Bluetooth on there too. So
glorious. The Z270E Gaming. I think that is a wonderful all-around gaming board from the Strix line. But let's kick it up a notch with the ROGs. We're going to start off with this one here, which is the Hero, named after my dog Hero. Not exactly, but
close enough.
He's right over there snoring, so we'll honor him at least. So the Hero... Was the Hero first started last generation, or was that 2 generations?
No, it's actually been now multiple generations. I think we can go back 4.
4?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Time slips by so quickly.
Yeah.
So the Hero was very welcomed by a lot of people because ROG boards were typically a little out of reach, but the Hero kind of brought it down.
Of entry.
Yeah, brought it down to being much more in reach. I think Steve got one of the first Hero boards right when it first launched. So we have metal heat sinks, which look really cool. I just want to point that out.
And so that's
brushed metal.
That's actually a good point. Yeah. So that some people might wonder, overclocking capabilities on pretty much all these boards are going to be identical in terms of having a great, reliable, solid OC experience. Whether you're talking about 4.6, 4.7, 4.8 plus gigahertz, it's not going to be an issue. What you're going to find a difference is that in the VRM components and in the heatsink designs, they're going to get more advanced on the higher end boards you go with. Really, the main benefit there is you're just talking about thermal efficiency and across the entirety of the VRM and how it dissipates temperatures. So generally, if you can keep the VRM even cooler, and you can distribute it more efficiently, you're going to maybe get a little bit better stability under heavy loads and under aggressive overclocking. So it's not a question that you're necessarily going to guarantee better overclocking experience, but you can help to ensure, I think, overall better long-term reliability under heavy, consistent loads. Okay. So especially if you're a gamer that's going under really demanding workloads, or you're simultaneously doing stuff, maybe streaming and gaming, it may be a little bit better option if you know you're consistently going to be hammering the system. But other areas that, of course, going to be different, of course, is the ID design. It's got a far more specialized ID design, and the audio is going to be even further kicked up in comparison to what we had on the Strix.
Supreme FX.
You get all the great stuff that we already talked about on the Strix and all the previous generations. So, pre-input power regulator, we've got the depop filter, the audio grade capacitors, the isolation, that S audio codec, right? But this one incorporates the ESS Saber DAC. So we get some serious high quality DAC processing that's on here. And you tie that in then with everything that we've done in terms of the Sonic Studio Suite that we talked about, plus some really new cool things that we've done in Sonic Radar. Sonic Radar's got an overhaul that we've been working on for literally the last 2 years. It's an entirely brand new algorithm. It has a new type of display mapping that works really, really, really granular in terms of showing you, I'd say, the result, but with a varying level of brightness on the actual radar field. So before, all sounds would essentially be prioritized at the same time, and so that could be difficult in the line of fire, figuring out which one is the one that you want to focus on. But now there's a lot more granular control on how it's displayed, and for users that don't necessarily want to focus on a specific audio type that we haven't processed in, you can now select specific frequencies that you want to dial into. So if you want to have like more so if you really subtly pick up things like bass tones or treble tones in certain types of maps or game engines, you can have it display those. So a lot of really cool customization that you have on there. But one other really cool thing that you're going to have on the ROG series boards is also a commitment to people that want to have high performance real water cooling configurations. And so what we have down here on the board is going to be water temperature sensor connections, so for input and output. So usually, depending on how you set up your radiator and everything along those lines, if you really want to be critical and monitor everything, you can go ahead and make connections for your fittings that have those sensors, and you can monitor that information. And if you also want to monitor a flow rate, you can also go ahead and connect that there as well. So when you talk about the level of fan control flexibility, the ability to run and control your PWM pumps, and add to that, I mean, the water cooling level control and connectivity is just absolutely awesome.
Wonderful. And I also want to point out dual M.2 once again. This one also has, of course, that USB 3.1 header, debug LED, and surface mounted. Nice solid start button there just to kick things off.
And on the headers too, some people might always wonder, we're still also actively supporting the OC panel and the ROG front base as accessories. Nice. So for users that want to be able to have that really high quality audio connection all the way from the board all the way to the front of the chassis, those accessories are fully supported.
And this one again has the RGB outs at the top and the bottom for RGB LED strips. I've been waiting so long. All right, this is the M9F Maximus 9 formula, and it's wonderful. I did some footage of it earlier. Hopefully that's playing right now, and it looks wonderful. So you have But so it's not called ROG or the thermal armor when it's on. It's ROG armor.
It's ROG
when it's
armor,
on here.
yeah.
But it's essentially performing the same task.
It's a little bit different. On the Tough series. It's actually functional, I would say, because it actually has channeling and venting. Really, on the ROG board, it's really first and foremost an aesthetic focus.
Okay.
Yeah, because you don't have the same type of assist fans or shunting or flow rate control that you can have on it.
Okay. Well, I stand corrected. This does have, of course, water cooling support in the VRM. So VRM water cooling
updated for this generation.
Updated.
New redesign from EK for this. So we actually developed an entirely new thin microchannel design.
Oh, cool.
So we even get better performance than the previous generation. It's copper. It's absolutely awesome. Of course, it's fully hybrid though. So if you want to run it entirely passive just like this, you're still going to get a great experience. But if you want to drop in water, you're good to go.
Still do that. They ditched the G1/4 fittings. No, I'm just kidding. They're still G1/4. But other than that, I mean, like everything I feel like you could want just about. What are you guys going to do with the Extreme? I don't know.
You're just going to have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see what the Extreme does. All right, so SLI support, I mean, a lot of these are pretty much
everything is
optimized for two-way because you're not going to do anything more than that on this platform. But different RGB zones, I'm guessing.
Yeah, multiple RGB zones. So you got it for the PCIe, you got down here for the PCH, you also have it here. And then even actually for this generation, we've gone back and customized this. Which in the past, it's been a little small point, but people are kind of like, I just want that much more.
That's okay. Yeah, that was actually one thing that I pointed out with the last version, so nice to update that as well. The I/O back here has a fixed I/O shield.
Yeah, so this was actually brought over from the absolute highest end board that we've pretty much ever made. It was our Rampage 5 Extreme Anniversary Edition board. So it was this fully integrated I/O shield. So for anybody that's ever forgotten to put in an I/O shield, they will absolutely love this. So it makes things even easier. And there's actually also additional durability benefits because of the direct proximity that we can make with all the actual contact headers for all the I/O ports. It significantly improves the air discharge and direct contact discharge.
Nice.
So in that same thing that we talked about, like on tough boards where we get superior protection, ROG boards already get upgraded ESD and surge diodes, but that's also put in place. So this board really is absolutely just packed to the gills. One other little thing that we didn't really touch on because it's hard to see is the software package. It's been updated across the board, so there's new versions of RAM cache and RAM disk software. Cool. They've also been updated to fully support NVMe based solutions. So you can get some really nice healthy performance gains from trying that stuff out. And that's one of those things that definitely you want to spend a little bit more time to find out about. If you are interested in ROG, don't sell the software short because some of the software that gets included really takes things to that next level, whether we're talking about from a gaming perspective and packet priority software, audio customization, or some of those other pieces in terms of performance oriented software.
Fabulous. And of course, still has the ROG armor, ROG backplate. The ROG backplate on the back that is all metal as well, and it's just heavy. I don't know. I like when a board is heavy.
It's a premium board. This is seriously, if you're looking for a really high-end build where you want to be able to control, I think the aesthetic, it looks fantastic. And I think when you incorporate also the customized 3D pieces, if you look to get some of those produced, we have some really, really nice ones. Like we have specialized ROG eye cable holders to allow you to kind of right angle out your cables that really complement the look and feel of the board. So some really, really cool stuff that we've got there.
And if I didn't mention it, dual M.2 again. One is protected by the panel back down here, and one is vertical at the bottom.
Yep.
There's dual M.2 everywhere. It makes me so happy. But that's all the motherboards that we have to talk about today, guys. I'm kind of sad that we're at the end, but it's been wonderful. JJ, thank you so much for coming by today.
As always, it's been awesome to be here.
And thanks to all you guys for watching. Of course, leave comments in the comment section down below. Let us know what you think. Let us know which of these boards is your favorite, because I know I can't decide, but I'm sure I'll think about it a lot more. Maybe I'll come up with something. Leave me a thumbs up if you want to, and subscribe to the channel for more content coming at you very soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.